Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Julie Evans. I'm the Practice Director for Provincial Speech Language Pathology, and really pleased to welcome you here this afternoon on behalf of the PEAS leadership team and my co-chair, Mark Moland. Mark is the manager for audiology and children's health in the South Zone and also the co-lead of the evaluation working group. So I know that you will know him well and the great work that he's been doing. Just want to thank you all for being here. It's 7 months since we were together for an ILC, so lots has happened, and we appreciate your participation. I think we have representation from every zone here this afternoon, so that's quite amazing. I just want to recognize that we acknowledge that many of you, or well, all of us are facing continued uncertainty and stress at work, and often also in our personal lives with upheaval due to COVID and the impacts of COVID on top of our already busy lives. So grateful that you continue to prioritize improving services for children with pediatric eating, feeding, swallowing disorders and their families. So thank you for that. And certainly you show your commitment by being here today. We also want to give a shout out today, September 15th, for Rehabilitation Day. This is Rehabilitation Day, and certainly our efforts here support children, infants and children to be active participants, to have meaningful participation and improve their function, enhance their function, and also the participation and wellness of their families. So thanks for all you're doing there. Just going to review the objectives for today. So building on our last ILC, today we'll continue to target quality improvement. At this session, you'll hear about each team's progress and their balanced scorecard, and update your action plans with practical next steps to implement and test the improvements your team wants to make. We'll share your reports and action plans with leaders so they can help you to remove barriers and keep this work moving forward. Next slide, please, Vanessa. And as we begin, we just want to emphasize that in this work, every child matters, and we want to take this time to acknowledge that our work is conducted on the territories of Treaties 6, 7, and 8, and the homeland of the Métis. We also acknowledge that many Indigenous communities, that have been forged in urban centers across Alberta. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves today to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And that collaboration and spirit of reconciliation just really comes to the heart of what we do here today. So thank you for taking a moment to acknowledge. Just want to let you know that this meeting is being recorded by AHS in a video format. So the recording may be used and disclosed by AHS for educational purposes and may be further broadcast for other presentations, publications, or promotions. This may include conversion to digital format, storing, and publication on AHS webcasting technology. We'll take a moment now just to do a little bit of housekeeping. Please look at the controls at the bottom of your screen if you're less familiar with using Zoom. Be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you have comments or questions during the presentation, we welcome you to type them into the chat box. And of course, continue to always type in any kind of words of gratitude. We're always happy to share them or hear them. Thank you. And just ask you now to take a deep breath and settle. And we know that we're privileged to be able to devote this time to make improvements that will directly impact children, families, and teams. At the same time, we recognize there are a lot of external pressures and priorities competing for our time and attention. We hope that you can have the peace of mind that your leaders support you in being here and agree that pediatric eating, feeding, and swallowing is an important priority that we're here to focus on today. So just want to encourage you to take a moment to set aside any distractions and also give yourself permission to be fully present and together here this afternoon. I know how that call of other responsibilities, how strong that can be, but just want to encourage you to grab your favorite fall beverage, pumpkin spice something or other it's likely to be, and silence your cell phone. Close your email and any extra screens on your desktop. Open documents. Maybe take a sec to jot down any to-dos that are cluttering your mind so that you can pick them up later, but put them aside for now. And for me, I appreciate this time just to breathe and just take a breath. Stretch and get comfortable. And now think of a family that you've worked with that inspires you and your participation today. Try and pull them up into your mind and create a picture. We have lots to cover in the next few hours, and just want to encourage you to be kind to yourself, to take a stretch, move around when you need to, keep your pumpkin spice, whatever it is, close at hand. 'Tis the season, and yeah, just settle in and be part of this and be present. Thank you for your commitment to that. Just going to quickly give you an overview of the agenda. We'll pass along updates about PEAS. We're going to hear from Judy about her family's experiences and successes and challenges and how we can improve. We're also excited to have each team share your successes and challenges so far. We are grateful to have Tracy Wasilek here. She'll be facilitating the Curbside consulting, where you can receive input from each other and QI consultants about your progress. And I've had the privilege of being part of Curbside consults that Tracy has led before, and it's just going to be amazing. You're going to learn so much. So thank you, Tracy, for that. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then after that, we'll come back to work on balanced scorecards and action plans again. When it's time to go into your breakout rooms with your team, if you registered in advance, you'll automatically be slotted into your breakout room, and otherwise you'll be prompted with a selection of available rooms to join at that time. And we'll get to that later in the later half of the workshop, but just so you know how that's going to happen. And of course, if you ever have any questions, just type them into the chat, and the magical Vanessa and others on the team will help you out for sure. At the end of the day, we're going to come back together as a large group and share and learn from one another again. So just to give you an overview of where we are in the process, a recap, we're about at the midway point in the ILC process. We've got a couple of great education sessions since our first ILC, and then our next webinar is coming up on November 24th, so please save the date. That will be with Grace Wong, a registered dietitian, who will talk about responsive feeding therapy in action and provide a case study of limited food variety. So more to come. A few updates. So we're excited to offer family peer mentorship across the province. There are about a dozen peer mentors available, and you can find more information about this from your team lead and the PEAS website. We recently posted a short how-to video on care planning on the PEAS website. So there are some examples, a case study, and an explanation of how it's synergistic with collaborative goal setting. And as I'm talking about this, I'm thinking about how this can apply in so much more of my work beyond eating and swallowing. So I hope you're all recognizing and grateful for the learning that we have here that can be applied across our work in AHS. And PEAS has also launched a number of new searchable and interactive pages on formula and coverage for children who are tube fed. So certainly check those out. And then last but not least, by way of updates, we are so thrilled to announce that PEAS, and so by PEAS I mean all of you, won the University of Alberta's annual Innovation Award for the Department of Pediatric. So this is just a huge honor, and you are all so well deserving to receive the recognition for your incredible work to innovate and implement the PEAS resources and to use a quality improvement approach to really just keep moving forward to see where we can learn and grow. So congratulations to each of you on that. We want to set the stage for today by sharing with you the impacts that we're already seeing. So this is an overview of the key performance indicators. The chart shows the change in each key performance indicator comparing spring versus summer in this past year. Spring is on the left and summer is on the right. Across the bottom are the arrows showing which direction we want to go in the desired direction for each KPI. So for some of these KPIs, we're looking for an increase and others a decrease. So you can kind of reference that along the bottom. And then you can see that there have been significant improvements denoted by the dark green bars already in 4 of the 8 indicators. And none of the other indicators have gone down as denoted by the confidence interval between the dashed gray lines. So overall, we're starting to already see some nice improvements. And there's much to celebrate as we're moving the dial. And at the same time, there are opportunities for continued growth, and this information helps us to learn where those are and how we can focus. Today, you're going to hear from sites that are both seeing improvements and continued challenges, and talk about the challenges that you're facing and targeting. So it's all about learning from each other and making course adjustments in your plans together. And if we weren't learning, we wouldn't be growing. So that's just a quick update, and we'll spend more time on that for sure. Now, hearing from families we know helps to ground us in why we're here and to remain focused on what matters. Learning from family experience is key to ensuring that together we make tangible improvements to services for children and families. Today, we are so privileged to have Judy Daphne with us. She's the mom of a child with a pediatric feeding difficulty. Judy, we just met before the session today, but I understand that your story is nothing short of heroic. So I'm really anxious to learn from you. We're grateful for your willingness to share a glimpse of the stresses and anxieties that may keep you up at night. We certainly appreciate your commitment to reminding us of the important role that we play in collaborating with families to set and reach goals. Infants and children with feeding and swallowing difficulties need the strength that you bring, that their families bring. And I understand from my colleagues that your story is going to just really demonstrate for us that love has no limits and that you're going to do what it takes for your little ones. So thank you, Judy, for being here, and I'll pass it now to you.
Thank you, Julie. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, for sure. You sound great.
Thank you for inviting me for sharing the stories. And I just wanted to say before I share our stories that the purpose of sharing our story is not to blame anybody or like point fingers, but it's really for improvement for the future families who will experience the similar thing that we experienced. And I am truly grateful for all the healthcare professionals in our journeys. So I just want to put it out there before we share our journey. So my name is Judy, and we live in Calgary. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter now named Jubilee. And Jubilee was born in 25 weeks and 5 days. So when she was born 2 weeks after her bowel perforated, and we were rushed from the foothills to the children's hospital. And so that bowel perforation on top of all the prematurity issues kind of caused us to stay in the NICU for 5 to 6 months. And during this 5 to 6 months, she experienced life and death. She had several surgeries, major surgery to her heart, to her bowels, and to her eyes. And then finally, we got discharged from the NICU onto the normal regular ward. And our journey wasn't ended, because that's our feeding difficulty starts. So after the NICU, after the TPN was taken out, Jubilee stopped growing. So she was on tube feed, and at the same time, I was trying to breastfeed her as well. But because she continued to fail to grow after the TPN stopped, eventually I was asked to stop the breastfeeding completely and replace all her intake with tube feed. And I have to be honest that was very difficult for me. And now when I look back, I think it was a mistake. And you know, I don't know, but you might agree with me, you know, after finish hearing our stories. But so Jubilee was on complete tube feed, and she started very bad vomiting. Every day she would vomit at least 4 to 5 times, or even more, maybe 10 times a day. Sometimes she vomit out her tube. And so after we got discharged from the ward, we were discharged home. I was the one who managed her NG tube feed, and it was so bad that she wasn't really growing. Despite the fact that the neonatal follow-up dietitian and PT were working with us, and we changed every week. We changed something, changed the concentration of her formula, change the volume, and we did everything, but she just had the tube feed intolerance. She just failed to grow, and she continued to vomit. So we were readmitted twice, once in September, once in November, for failure to thrive, because she continued to be small. And eventually on our last admission, they decided that NG wasn't working, so we got switched to NJ. And NJ, as you know, NJ, that I have no control over it. If it comes out, we have to go back to the DI, and she has to have the tube inserted by a physician under the furrow. So we went home with NJ with continuous feed. And unfortunately, Jubilee continued to vomit and vomit. So towards the end, I had to call DI almost every day to have the tube reinserted. And I don't know if you have seen a little baby being tied down on a table, and with 4 adults holding her while she was crying and screaming, and had the doctor go in and out trying to put the NJ in. But we had to go through this every single day, and till this one doctor told me that I need to keep a better job of looking at the NJ so it doesn't come up. And I just lost my emotion on him, because you know, don't think I have ever slept since Jubilee was born. And watching that NJ or NG was the only thing that was in my mind 24/7. And I don't feel like I, have control over it if she managed out to vomit out the NJ every single day. But it was very difficult for us. So after I lost my emotion on him, we reinserted the NJ, and we extended 10 centimeters even lower down to her bowel. And we went home, and 1 hour after, she vomited out the NJ. And I decided that was it. I am not taking her back to the hospital anymore. In the meantime, I didn't know where to go to. Nobody seemed to be able to help us besides, like giving us the order for how much volume and NG and NJ that we need to pump into her. Nobody seemed to have any solutions for her vomiting. Nobody. We were seen by the GI clinic. We were followed by the pediatrician. We were followed by the neonatal follow-up. Nobody had solution for us. And I was crying and desperate for solution for Jubilee. Jubilee didn't have any medical issues at the time. The only issue that she had was being small and oral aversion. And because all the vomiting, she developed very severe oral aversion. She would not have anything close to her mouth. So nobody had any solution. I just feel like I'm in this deep black hole and I couldn't get out of it. And so I put the NG back into her, and then I just Google online to see if there is anybody out there in the world able to help us to wean the two feet off and then get her start eating by mouth. So I came across with this eating school from Austria. And then the funny thing is I actually watched a documentary about them many years ago before I had surgery. That was an old documentary from like 20 years plus years ago that they were helping a girl who doesn't eat and she was 7 years old, and they helped her to wean off her tube, and she was able to sustain herself by mouth. So I just made the decision that I will go into, I went on to GoFundMe.com and I raised the money and I booked the ticket. I registered for the school, and I was ready to go to Austria to get her wean off her 2 feet in 2 weeks. And then COVID hit, of course. So then we stuck at home. But then we used the money we raised to join the net coaching program from this eating school. And we were successful in weaning her off from 2 feet successfully in a month. And let me tell you, it was life-changing for us. For those of you who are parents who have kids, you know eating is everything and how stressful it is. And I would never dreamed of that I can actually watch her putting food in her mouth and enjoying the feed. And of course, the journey didn't end because, she remained to be small, and we transitioned from neonatal follow-up to the early childhood rehab, ECR in Calgary. And then so the transition was slow because of the COVID, and then we continue to work with the dietitian and the OT. And then my PTSD did come back a little bit because we were talking about a lot of numbers like Z-score, her growth chart and things like that. First, she's remained 3 percentile, and then her weight hasn't grown, she hasn't gained any weight for probably 11 months after the tube feed is completely stopped. So that put a lot of pressure on me and doubt. But then at the same time, I need professional help to help me to get her be interested in food. So I took in my own hands. So even though COVID hit, she had a couple of NICU friends, and then I know all the preemie moms are very, very keen, like very careful with the kids, and then like hand hygiene and all that. So I set up play date, eating play date, picnic play date, so that I invite them over. I lay a big blanket, and then I have all sorts of foods for them to eat and play, and there's no pressure. And I just want her to grow out loving food. And you know, it's not really the number like on the scale that matters. It's that after the 2 feet is gone, she can turn, she started to sit up nicely, she can walk, she can talk, she can touch all the food and just play with them. And so it's more than just feeding and swallowing. It's a child's long-term development that I think this is so important. So that's like our story in a very nutshell. I just wanted to say that I'm very excited about the PEACE program, and we did participate the response feeding workshop, and it was very helpful. Something I feel like I wish we had was a team of experts, and this is maybe just for our specific situations about tube weaning on the kids that are stable. I just wish that when the kids were discharged with a tube feed into the community, I wish there were a plan how to, and then the duration and the plan to how to wean them off. Yes, we have to, you know, like listen to the kids' clue, but we have to provide that opportunity for them to feel hungry, to give them the motivation and the environment to enjoy food. And we can't just go to this, now will be the Zoom meeting once every couple months, and then just, you know, maybe just see them in a few minutes and then just say, okay, we can try this and this. No, I just wish there were a team, a group of people who is knowledgeable, maybe a doctors, OT, PT, even a children behaviorist, psychologist. I wish there was such a team that, okay, these kids have been transitioned from home, from tube feeding. And if there is no medical intervention, how do we wean her off from tube feed and get her developed, you know, with other, you know, areas? And that's what I would like to see from this group. And connecting with other parents, because we feel so alone. And I actually, besides hanging out with our NICU friends, at that time, I refused to hang out with anybody who has no more full-term babies, because it was really draining. And then the tube feed weaning process was very, very emotional and stressful. So I wish there was some emotional support. Somebody had done this, that who can share their experience with us. So this is something just from our experience that I wish I can see this in the PEACE program in the future, that, you know, maybe there's such a service and team available in each big cities that we are able to help the transitions a lot better, and the parents who has feeding difficulties, babies won't experience what we experience. So, but you know, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak up, and I just want to thank you for the people who really wanted to support us, but I think it was just a lot of lack knowledge and lack of systemic coordination to support us at the time. So yeah, that's our story.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story, Mark. And I just, on behalf of all of us, I think we all want to thank you for your courage and your strength, obviously going through this journey, but for coming here today and spending the time to prepare and certainly put together those beautiful pictures of your daughter. I know there were many comments in the chat box. And I think, you know, for me, I think parts of your story really stood out in terms of obviously the strength and that, you know, commitment and perseverance that you've had throughout this journey. And when I look at the, I think 100+ participants that we have on here today, I can be assured that, you know, in Alberta, I think we have this commitment, and this is, you know, we're here for this learning collaborative so that we can learn from families like you and from the expertise that we have across the province to really understand the journey and what's important to families. And I was really struck, so I co-chair our evaluation work group, and earlier Julie showed kind of the dashboard, the picture of the graphs going up and down. And for me, as we look at that information, part of that data that comes into that is a survey that we send to parents to get their input and information. And your story really struck me that, you know, every individual kind of experience that we get in to that survey and all the experience of the clinicians really helps to guide us. And so it'll help tell us the things that we are doing well, the things that are improving, and those areas that we're, you know, still struggling with. So thank you very much for sharing your story today. I believe we had in our agenda a couple of minutes for questions, and I have seen just in the chat box, we've had, I think, many thanks and acknowledgements. But if there was kind of any kind of last word you wanted to share with us, Judy, maybe we'll give you the last word here, and then we'll transition into the next part of our day today.
Oh, I just wanted to encourage all the clinicians that, you know, when you help a family, the main thing is develop a relationship with them. Look at the child, spend some time with the child, not just the numbers, put the numbers behind. And when you develop that trust relationship with the parents, I think all your suggestions will come across. But if you focus too much on the numbers or charting, spend so much time charting instead of looking at the child or generating care about the child and showing interest on the child, then you can suggest all you want, but they will not take your suggestions. That's from our experience. But we met many great clinicians around the world, and then we just hope that this group will continue to improve and then provide I know you guys all care about the kids and the parents, and I just wanted to thank you for all your great work. And then, you know, I also signed up for the mentor parent program as a volunteer, so I might come across path with you again. But I just want to wish everybody the best in this COVID world, and then enjoying food and enjoying your work. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And I'm not sure if you plan to stay for the remainder or if you have other commitments, but certainly, again, just wanted to thank you from all of us for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to move into the next part of our agenda, which is the celebration of teams and the report out. And so part of what we want to do here is we have each team share a couple of successes and challenges as they've experienced over the last 7 months. And we all, I know from being part of my team, we have all of those ups and downs and things we want to try and things that work and won't work. But we have so much great experience. And I do really think that this is one of the great benefits that we have both within Alberta Health Services and through the ILC process is we get to learn and listen to one another. So given our time today, though, we only get the little snippets. And so as I was kind of thinking about this part, for those that know me, I love mountains and going out to the mountains. And so sometimes on Instagram, you get the little picture and I go, ooh, that seems interesting. Wonder where that is. And then you have to figure that out. So you have to find people to talk about, have they been there? What's their experiences? How did they get there? Was it good, bad? And that's another piece I think we'll do a little bit today. And so that curbside consulting, we get a bit more information. But I really do encourage everybody as you're listening this afternoon, if there are opportunities where you hear something, you can jot the person's name down, connect with the team leads and we'll kind of help connect you. But there might be those ideas that we can really help explore that, as Judy described, if we can put some of these pieces together that we already have in Alberta, we can really make care great for each individual family coming through. So we'll kind of run through the process. I'll introduce the team. We'll talk about one thing from the PEAS leadership group that we've noticed and wanted to acknowledge and appreciate. And then we'll go through a slide that'll have the dashboard. And then the team lead will identify some of their successes and the challenges. So just to orient us all to kind of the way the slides will be laid out, this is an example. So you'll see on every team scorecard along the right side, we have successes to share and challenges to share. So those will be in the slide presentation. And then we have level 3. If we look, I think the little bar will pop up here. Yep, in the red. So that's the baseline. So that's where everybody started back in February. And we chose that number from a practical point in terms of how the scale would work for us. And then each team set their own targets, trying to work towards level 10, trying to make and achieve those targets over time. And the dark green that you can see in the little boxes shows where we're at today. And so for each of the teams, as you look, you may want to look at teams where, things are at that higher level, because that might give an opportunity to say, wonder what they're doing in that area to achieve that. And also, I think some of those areas where, if you find that you're higher and another team's lower, maybe some conversation to share some of the challenges that you've had and some of the ways you've kind of worked through that experience. All right, so we have a fair number of teams, and so this will kind of be a rapid point of the day. So as we work through, if people are able to get ready and off of mute, will be great. And so again, I'll kind of give an initial kudos or thanks or one piece, and then we'll move into one or both of the team leads sharing their experience. So for the ACH Early Child Rehab team, the kudos goes to piloting the care plan using a Plan, Do, Study, Act, or PDSA cycle. And we applaud them for taking this methodical approach, and we're excited for them to share more about this later in the presentation. So that's coming up in your agenda. So I'll turn it over to Thomas, I think.
Actually,
Sonia?
Oh. Yeah, Sonia's going to speak on behalf of ECR.
Oh, perfect. Okay, go ahead, Sonia.
Yeah, no, thanks. So just successes to share in a nutshell. So we were able to streamline survey distribution via clerical. So that's been great when we are able to do that through essentially noting if the appointment in the schedule system was eating, feeding, swallowing based, and then that's quick for clerical to see, and that's automatically sent out by clerical. We have also piloted episodes of care for urgent feeding, and we're trying to identify, what works, what doesn't within that. So, and it's similar to what other programs within ACH are using. So things that have come up so far with that is, when we look at episode of care of, say, 4 visits planned with the family right when they enter the program. One thing that's come up is, how could we embed a team conference or cross-professional consult designated time within that? So that's been great to try that. I feel the feedback has been great on from clinicians because it allows for them to focus on the child and the family and not scheduling the next appointment after each appointment. So that's been a bonus. I believe Tom will talk about that oral feeding care plan. That's something our team was involved with. So I'll leave that to Tom. Challenges to share, just I think it's always just figuring out time to kind of get feedback, meet, report, review, and share information with just vacation, LOAs, demands, workload, all that. And then we have had to shift for spring to having our feeding clinicians really focus on those at-risk urgent patients with swallowing challenges that we feel we have to see, which has meant we've had to put more routine cases completely on hold, and those families are not getting service. And so that's obviously been quite stressing on families, of course, but also clinicians to try to make those decisions and allocate resources to kind of a certain population, knowing that others are not being supported. So, and then, yeah, you can see our data on the left there. I'm not sure if you want me to go into that, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think the data pieces people can just kind of look at as we're sharing, and if there's follow-up questions, they can take those away. So thank you very much. So next we'll do the ACH outpatient eating, feeding, and swallowing. And so the kudos that the PE's leadership team would really like to highlight that families are feeling involved in care decision. So when you look at their data on the next screen, you'll see that they're above the provincial average and even their own targets. So really great work there. So I'll turn it over to Melanie.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. ACH Eating, Feeding, Swallowing Service has been doing some similar work to what Sonia described, so I will not repeat too much of what she said, but we have adopted that episodes of care approach for our urgent referral groups as well, having identified some distinct groups of referrals that are coming in. I'll just mention a challenge in similar to what Sonia mentioned, in that we've had to hold off on seeing our routine referrals in the midst of the pandemic response. And so we are working towards that episodes of care definition for our routine groups of referrals as well. Meanwhile, in the work that we've been doing with our urgent referral groups and the episodes of care, we have been collecting data around supply, demand, activity, third next available, that sort of thing. And the data so far is demonstrating a real benefit to the accessibility of our services, which is one of our key metrics that our team has been focused on. Another real success to share, I think, in our realm, and I'm sure Sonia would echo this as well, is that the changes provincially have, while they've been challenging, they have put us in constant and regular and collaborative contact with our partners across the zone as we really adjust to changes, not only with COVID, but with funding changes, etc. And so there's been some really nice communication channels formed across the Calgary zone and across the province for that matter. And again, that comes with its challenges as well, as we navigate, as we support our patients and families to navigate through the changes and the challenges with funding. Yeah, I think that's kind of a summary of where Eating, Feeding, Swallowing Services is. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. So next, Calgary Pediatric Home Care. And so Meredith engaged her team by creating an incredibly innovative locked room exercise, which I had some questions about this when Vanessa shared this one. And we saw the difference in the surveys and the care. They also introduced feeding rounds immediately after our first ILC session back a few months ago. So we'll turn it over. Meredith, I think you're up. We're not hearing you, Meredith, if you're maybe on mute. Or is Mary Ellen doing this one?
I think it was Mare, but
can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me?
We can now, yes.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm just talking to myself. Okay, sorry guys.
Go ahead. Thank you.
just some successes that we're still experiencing would be continuing to collect data to understand our population. So our P surveys are still going on. And then we've kind of taken a focus with feeding rounds on trying to break down some system barriers that we're having and some education and family-centered care. So we've had some really great experiences going on there. We're kind of ECRs downline as well as specific clinics out of ACH. And so we're getting a lot of care plans coming out on trial, which is awesome for our team. And just that our families are feeling more supported within our cohort of little feeders that we have in the community. And then some challenges that we've been experiencing is just working through some system and collaboration issues, same I think as most of the rest of us. Just out in the community, out of the buildings, finding, you know, more areas where our families, like Judy has expressed, continue to struggle with feeding. So schools is on our radar, and they're struggling with how to support families with enteral feeds and things like that. So that falls with our team. Another barrier that's kind of come up with us in evaluating our data might be when we aren't on the same page with goals and feeding plans with families, just how to keep them safe and out of hospital and carry on with family planning and goals that way. And just staffing is another barrier for us, but we are getting organized. So yeah, that's us in home care.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And again, as we go through this, the next part of the afternoon is each of our teams, you know, thinking about where do we want to plan next. So I think for me, hearing some of these gives some ideas about, you know, things that we're already doing and some other ideas about where we might want to focus too. So thanks. So now Calgary Zone, Pediatric Community Rehab. And so from the PEAS team, trialing the goal wheel and spreading it beyond the EFS program has been one of the things that's been noted for this team. So we'll turn it over to Catherine.
Yeah, thanks. So we've had some successes and some challenges, just like everybody. Some of our, I guess, immediate successes really have been that we've actually managed to start seeing clients again using the virtual platform. So most of you know our program was redeployed for the majority of last year. So we've been building a team. We have our OTs and PTs, OTs and SLPs in place, and we're trying to leverage some of that dietitian support. So it's been great to build a team and get our team members familiar with the PEAS website and resources and that kind of stuff. They've found the goal wheel and are exploring that use. So that's something that we've been talking about, even seeing how we can roll that out across our program as opposed to just something that's being used in PEAS. Very, very early stages of that, but it's been exciting. And we are trying to, what we've really been focusing on, I guess, is expanding access to services within our program so that then we can start bringing over kids from ECR and from the eating, feeding, and swallowing service at Children's Hospital. So it's starting. The other success, I think Mel also mentioned this, is really some of those zone level conversations that are occurring within the zone to access and discuss and figure out how to provide services for eating, feeding, and swallowing in the Calgary zone and in the surrounding area. So that's been really our focus, I guess, the last little while. Challenges, of course, I mentioned already, staff were redeployed again since the last ILC. So just as we were starting to get going, everything shut down again. And so when everybody came back from redeployment the second time, we were kind of back to ground zero a little bit. And like Mel also mentioned, you know, part of the success is the Calgary zone collaboration, and that can be a little bit of a challenge for us too, because all of that zone work that's being done will impact our service, and feels a little bit like it's difficult to really move too much forward because we don't want to get ahead of the 8 ball. We are still navigating that hybrid approach, I think, like everybody in the province. So that's been another challenge for us to try and get over. And consistency and resource access is something that we've also identified just as a little bit of a challenge. We don't have our own dietitian. allocated, I guess, to our feeding program. And as we expand the number of days of clinic that we're offering, we're still struggling to make sure that we have that real interprofessional collaboration and making sure that we have the right people at the table. So that's kind of Calgary Zone in a nutshell.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And so now we'll look at Calgary Zone Rural Pediatric Allied Health. And so as we switch to the next slide, I think we'll see under the effectiveness measure step, most of the teams across the province are hovering around that respectable level 5 in terms of where most of us are at. But this team is already at level 8. So doing some great work there in the team. So I'll turn it over, Christine.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so we're pretty happy with our outcomes so far. Our data is somewhat limited, probably compared to some of the other programs, because we don't necessarily see high volumes of eating, feeding, and swallowing clients at all of our hubs or sites. So what you're seeing in front of you is our data, and successes that we're experiencing to date are, we've really gotten confirmation from our families that they feel involved in their child's care. So that's super encouraging for our program. Before starting with PEAS, one of the things we were working on just as a program was being more collaborative and setting more goals with our families, and then joining PEAS has helped just continue to nudge us in that direction. So we're seeing some really great success with that. We're using the goal wheel and it's working out really, really well. And we don't have a wait list. I don't know if there's any other programs that are similar to us in that, but we feel lucky that we're able to get all of our families, even beyond eating, feeding, and swallowing kids, in rather quickly. On the flip side of things, in terms of challenges, I think we're doing, we've gotten better at getting surveys out, but it's still an area that's a little bit tricky for us. And again, part of that is because some of our sites don't see a whole lot of eating, feeding, swallowing patients. And so when they do get one, it's a little out of the ordinary for them potentially, and they may not be thinking about the surveys. So we're trying to keep that in the forefront, and we've been pretty good at meeting as a team, pretty good meeting as a team monthly or close to monthly. So just continuing to have those conversations and keeping it at the forefront of everyone's brain. And the last piece of the challenge for us, we had a bit of a higher percentage than we expected for children being seen in the ED. And we aren't really sure why or how come, or the numbers exactly. So we've been chatting with Vanessa a little bit, and we're just seeking to understand that. But otherwise, yeah, things are going good. I'm not sure if Sarah Finlayson's on the line. She might want to add. Hi, Christine. I think you summarized it beautifully. Awesome. I guess one other thing I could add is just, we are also part of those zone level conversations around eating, feeding, swallowing services across the Calgary zone. So those have been fantastic, and we're looking forward to the outcomes of that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. So now we're going to move down to my end of town, so the south end of Alberta. So we'll start with the Medicine Hat Pediatric Specialty Clinic. And so they have the highest family survey participation rate and have been actively using and continuing to improve the multidisciplinary care plan as one of the key things that the PEAS group has noticed. And we'll turn it over to Janine.
Thanks. So you mentioned already the first piece about increasing our survey response rate. So we feel we've done an excellent job considering the size of our population here. And through this, we had implemented a consistent process for families to complete the survey using our nurses in our clinic. The majority of our families have been using the iPad to complete the survey. And so the nurses are starting it out for them, putting in the patient information and the usually just to help the process be more efficient. And the second success we've had is increasing the implementation of our family care plans. And so that's shown in our data as well, so that we have, we start out with about 75% people showing they had a care plan, and now we're up to 94. And we've received lots of excellent feedback from our families who they really appreciate getting a written summary of all the information that was discussed during the appointment. And one of the things we didn't quite expect was actually that the nurses in our program really appreciate having the written summary as well. So if anybody calls, they're able to be able to field questions a little bit more easily, having that clearly written plan there for them. And one of the challenges, and we kind of anticipated this with the care plan. So because we are multidisciplinary in our appointments, and we're working on a single care plan during the appointment, just the logistics of how do we complete it out to fill it out as we're working along. And so we're really hoping that with Connect Care, that maybe that part is more simple.
Yes, thank you. I think we have probably similar feelings over here. And I think you also highlighted, I think one of the important parts that I always find, especially in evaluation, but in quality improvement work, it's some of those things that are surprising, right? And some unanticipated. You mentioned, some was anticipated and some was a surprise. So I think paying attention to that throughout, these next few months is really important too, because sometimes that surprise is good and sometimes it's takes us in a direction we didn't want to go. So I think that's great to highlight that. So now we'll go to Teresa, who's out of my office here. And so one of the things that I can speak to is that the team of staff down here in the South Zone creatively improved the communication between the various teams and disciplines who didn't even know each other before. And I think that to me has been one of the exciting. We actually know now who we are when we come on the calls. And then I think we'll also highlight some of the way that the communication has been established, which I can honestly say in the last probably 2 weeks, there's been at least 3 families that I would say have had positive outcomes because of that communication approach to have a more coordinated care plan. So I'll turn it over to Teresa.
Thanks, Mark. So Mark just kind of alluded to our biggest goal when we first set out in the ILC was actually just to improve communication between the professionals down here in the Southwest Zone. As Mark said, we didn't know everybody. And so that was definitely a challenge to providing good collaborative services to our families. So what we recently did was actually come up with something fairly simple that has been really, really successful in a very short period of time. And it was just coming up with a Southwest Zone email group. And so it's pretty much key contacts from each of our programs. So we've got dietitian, nursing, children's allied health, case management, and our hospital SLPs, who are the ones that do our swallow studies. So that email group has been really, really wonderful. We're sharing it out with all of our teams so that if there's any kiddo that we're just wondering about, is there a dietitian involved, or have they had a swallow study, or is someone from Children's Allied Health involved, we can quickly get that communication going and get connected to the right people, which has been really, really helpful. Just like Mark said, just within the last couple of weeks, there's been several that I've dealt with, so that's been really great. The other thing is that we have implemented the patient survey across programs, so that that's one of our successes in that we have done it, but it's also one of our challenges in that I think being consistent in doing it has been a little bit challenging. So I like a couple of things that other programs have already said that they're doing to be more consistent with getting those family surveys actually completed. So hopefully that's something we can work out over time. And then the other main challenge that we've been having is how to implement these standard documents within each of our programs, just because we're not all based out of the same office, and each one of our programs has a different way of documenting their visits. So we're struggling as a group to kind of figure out how do we get one cohesive document with all of the information the family needs versus having multiple pieces of paper, basically, that's state what they need to do. So we're just trying to problem solve that, and hopefully Connect Care will help with that, but we're still a little ways away from that. So thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you, Teresa. Next, we'll move up Alberta, so up to the Central Zone. And so here, the kudos is families feel highly involved in shared decision-making, and clinicians in the zone are intentionally focused on being partners in family-centered care. And so we'll turn it over to Christine, I think.
Thanks, Mark. Nancy's going to speak today.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Mark. So yeah, thanks for that intro. So our successes and challenges actually sound quite similar to the Calgary Zone Rural as I'm listening to people chat. So what we're doing is making sure that we're ensuring all families have their family-centered goals, and we're trialing some of the pieces of the CPG, and we're really digging into it a little bit more and doing some self-reflection on what we're doing well, maybe where some of the gaps are. And so we're finding that really helpful. And from that came the realization that we may need some more support from QI to help us narrow down our goals and objectives. And so that's where we're heading next. And I feel like that's a real success for us as a team. And then gathering data on how many families are getting EFS services outside our zone and why people are maybe accessing EFS outside central zone. You know, why is that happening? How many are going? You know, what can we do to help support those families? So that's another area that we're looking towards. And I feel like that's a success because we're narrowing down our scope here and what we're going to look at. So the challenges that we're finding are staff turnover and limited FTE is impacting our ability to gather information and even participation in that ILC piece. People are finding it really hard to find the time. And so we're really discussing that as a team and figuring out how we're going to advocate for increased designation. And so, and the other thing that's hard, and oftentimes we see this in rural settings, is that the low caseload numbers. And so when we see kids for EFS, it's often routine clients. So, you know, gathering that data is sometimes more difficult to do with that population. So those are our challenges and successes.
Great, thank you, Nancy. So Vanessa, I'm just going to do a time check. I think we're close, maybe a little behind.
Yeah, we probably, if we can, you know, save a little bit of time here and there, that'd be great. The teams want to maybe highlight one or two things that might be new. That would be great. Don't want to shortchange you either, though.
No, for sure, for sure. Excellent. So we'll move further north up to the Glen Rose.
Hi, I'm Cynthia from Peds Feeding and Swallowing at the Glen Rose. Thanks for having us. I really want to thank our whole team, but our dietitians, our occupational therapists, our psychologists, our speech paths. Everybody's been working really hard, and over the course of the pandemic, also the families have been coping with so many school changes and family changes at home. So I think everybody deserves a little pat in the back for just showing up. I have some photos of our team just for people to look at. I think some of the things we found is just we're happy to have decreased some wait times for urgent referrals and for our routine referrals too. And it's great that families are feeling more involved in their child's eating, feeding, and swallowing. We've really struggled with survey returns, the completion rate. That's something we continue to try to address, and to really decrease our wait times for families while they're waiting for service, and how to best support kids that have severe and chronic eating, feeding, and swallowing challenges, and their caregivers.
Great, thank you very much. And then we'll go over to the Stollery. And so we have, I believe, 3 different clinics out of the Stollery that we're going to highlight. And so we want to really highlight Amandy's pivotal role as the team lead for each of these 3 Stollery clinics. And so we have kudos to share for each one that I'll kind of run through, and then Mandy will take us through the overview. So for the Stollery Aspiration Clinic, ED visits and hospitalization are very low considering the level of complexity that they see in terms of the clients. The Stollery Aerodigestive Clinic, the multidisciplinary care planning and also involving the physician specialists has been a real kudos to them. And then the Stollery Feeding and Swallowing Clinic, one of the first clinics to adapt the care plan and to give families a copy of that care plan. So we'll turn it over to you, Mandy.
Thanks, Mark. I'm going to speak today mostly in regards to our outpatient feeding and swallowing clinic, as that's the clinic where we've been able to focus most of our efforts. It's also been the clinic where we've had the most data to analyze, both in terms of number of patients seen and also our survey responses. So with regard to successes, we've been, like Mark already said, we've been monitoring our emergency department hospitalization admission rates and have found those to be consistently low, despite many of our patients being, medically complex, particularly in our multidisciplinary clinics. Secondly, the survey comments we've received have been quite positive. So having some qualitative data has been helpful and also reassuring. With regard to challenges, we've invested quite a bit of time revamping our care plan process to ensure that every family is leaving our clinic with an individualized care plan. And yet, unfortunately, we aren't really seeing that reflected in our family survey scores. And in fact, we actually scored higher, quite a bit higher, when we weren't providing families with any formal documentation during their appointment. So that's been a little bit perplexing to us, but we're planning to stay the course for now and hope that we start to see a change as we continue.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, and I think we've heard a couple times that we're, we have some of the data. It takes a little bit to start to read into what's behind some of that data as well. So thank you. All right. So now we'll go up to the North Zone. And so the kudos here, while the North Zone is spread out, the team has been very excited to come to the table and participate as they can. We are proud of them for being the pioneers and identifying early adopters to help spread PEAS across the North Zone. So I'll turn it over. Oh, sorry, too many screens here. Sorry, I think I jumped out of line there. So Cynthia or Cindy, sorry, did you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, I can go first here. So yeah, the North Zone comprises 72% of the Alberta landmass, and we divide our North Zone into 10 management areas. And Laurel is representing the team that's in kind of 1 or 2/2 of those areas. So I'm helping facilitate our general team, which is for clinicians that come from all over the 8 remaining management areas. And our ultimate goal is that clients and families, no matter where they are in the North Zone, that they would, if they have needs for services for pediatric eating and swallowing, that they would be able to get that service in their county or in a county close to them. And our brave adopters are just so wonderful. I'm so proud of each and every one of them. For many of us, we are actually developing this PEAS skill set and competency. So our goal is to get like a baseline competency for it. And we're kind of all in different places. Like we have little pieces here and there. And some of us are kind of starting from the beginning, but we're just trying to put it all together so that we can provide some service. And some of the successes are that we've just had the opportunity to attend the professional development events. And that has been helpful for us to just kind of sort things out with our diagnostics. And we've also had some great success in just finding information, great materials on the PEAS website, not only to help us in our learning journey, but also like so that we can share these resources with families. So that's been really great. And some of the challenges that we've had that we've heard like from other areas too is the staff turnover. So like, for example, we had a team that had like an RT and SLP and OT, and then they got, now they have 2 vacancies in those areas. So now we have a sole practitioner that's just kind of, trying to hold down the fort. So, we do see this, and that is a challenge for us. Another one though is for us, in developing our skill set, a challenge for us is just finding practitioners and teams that we can shadow virtually. Like, we just want to be able to look at a team that has experience doing assessments and treatments, and just go in and observe and shadow and just watch and learn them working with an actual family. So that's where we're at. Thank you for the time. And if Laurel, if she's here, we can see if she has a little update she'd like to share.
Yes, go ahead, Laurel. Sorry, I jumped ahead on the slide there.
Okay, that's no problem. Thanks. I'll try to keep it quick in the interest of time. We're just continuing to develop our capacity within our team. We do have some new staff that have joined us, but we really spent the bulk of our time so far developing a triage system for feeding and swallowing clients, which organically turned into twice weekly rounds, which we've seen a really nice, it's been a real benefit to our clients, actually, in many ways, not just the eating and feeding and swallowing clients. Along with that, we've been implementing the goal wheel. Again, we have taken this across the whole multidisciplinary team, not just the eating and feeding clients, which has slowed us down a bit as far as the PEDS ILC is concerned. But however, we're seeing a nice, I believe we're going to see a nice outcome across the team for this. The next step is to work on a feeding care plan. And some of our challenges have been that because we've been implementing a lot of new business processes, we've been really struggling actually to kind of keep some of them all straight, and basically remembering to do the goal wheel and the survey. So we're consistently brainstorming to come up with different ideas how to make this more consistent and effective. And I just want to add that we've been writing down a lot of good ideas from the rest of the teams as they've been sharing their successes. So we really appreciate this sharing. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So then for this team, I think Vanessa.
Yeah, so this
just
one,
going to show the
Mary,
scorecard.
yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we'll just flip here and just show you this scorecards. We don't have representation from their team lead today. And same.
Yeah, so those are both the home nutrition support programs, and both of them have been able to keep their wait lists really low even during COVID. So kudos to them. And then the neonatal follow-up clinic, they've had a lot of constructive and positive feedback from their family surveys. So yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you. Well, it's certainly, we went through those quick. And again, I, referenced, Instagram earlier, kind of flicking through the thing, but several things stood out for me. And I think, certainly Teresa from my team will probably have some ideas too. So we'll certainly follow up. So we'll transition next, and I'll do a quick introduction for Tracy Wozliak, and then we'll move into the Curbside consulting part of our day and really try to get a bit deeper into some of these conversations. So as some of you that were here last time, you may know Tracy Wozliak, who is one of our gurus in Alberta Health Services with the ILC method and has done this with many teams across many different areas of healthcare. And so Tracy is our Chief Program Officer, Strategic Clinical Networks with AHS. She has numerous senior leadership, she's held numerous senior leadership roles with AHS and is an adjunct assistant professor appointment with the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary. She is also the co-lead for AppScore 2.0, a learning health system platform, and has received a number of awards and designations from both within AHS and externally. And for any of you that have had the opportunity to hear and learn with Tracy in the past, you'll know that she brings such a depth and breadth of experience. So we're excited to have her joining us today, and she'll walk us through the next steps.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, thanks. And thanks, everybody. I'm just really impressed. I love looking at your scorecards and seeing all those green bars moving upward, and also just highlighting where there's still opportunity for improvement. So I think I've said to you before, better has no limits. So it's always encouraging to see where things change and opportunities to learn from each other. So wanted to talk a little bit about curbside consulting. This, if you looked into the IHI methodology, you would not see this. This is kind of a made in Alberta opportunity that we created to get teams to ask each other, like as you were listening to the team reports and hearing about successes, challenges, it might have stimulated your curiosity, or you want to learn a little bit more about how teams have achieved that progress. So the Curbside Console is really to seek guidance, ask questions, get ideas and suggestions from other people around our Zoom table. So Mark, next slide, please. One of the things that in the Curbside Consult that we try and encourage is learning from others about what techniques they used to get to the performance that you saw on those slides. So one great tool at your fingertips has been this quality improvement along the patient journey, and tools and examples, and a panel discussion on how to apply those in your units and in your clinical environments. So one of the things that we want to encourage kind of discussion around is, well, what tools did you use to get to where you were? So just a reminder on that webinar, which I know you guys have seen and can continue to see because it's on the PEAS website, is things like creating awareness, the ADCAR method, using really clear PDSA cycles. And I think this afternoon you'll talk a little bit about how you might deploy those, the patient journey mapping, fishbone diagram, the 5 whys, and then this idea of areas of waste. So one of the things that I think when you have this chance to ask and inquire, maybe you want to ask the team specifically what those steps were, or there may be other questions, but I just wanted to prime the pump with that kind of quality improvement thinking. So in the course of this ILC, we've heard a lot about the care planning as an area that really needed improvement. And we sort of heard from Judy today just about getting a plan and having a follow-up plan that is comprehensive, but it meets the needs of patients and families. So we thought it would be good before we started to ask some questions to get a little bit of an update on the care planning. And so I'd like to, from the Alberta Children's Hospital, introduce the early childhood rehab team, specifically Tom Young and Tammy Nolan, who are going to talk a little bit about their journey with improvements in care planning at the Children's Hospital. So over to them, and then we'll come back for some curbside questions and opportunities. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for that, Tracy. So we utilized a PDSA cycle, which is kind of just a tool that formally tests a change in practice. So that stands for plan, do, study, act. So setting your sort of improvement goal, carrying out the plan, and studying and sort of analyzing what the outcome was. And it's an iterative approach, so it has lots of versions. The point being, each time you test a small change and see what worked and what didn't, and kind of refine your plan to carry out the next cycle. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. So our plan was to ensure that every child's parent has an eating, feeding, swallowing plan that is developed and documented for their child, sort of collaboratively, and the care plan is updated at 100% of subsequent appointments. Parents and care teams are to have a copy of the most recent care plan. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, sorry. There we go. So I think we're very much a do culture in healthcare, and I think what was useful about this for me was kind of going back to really being methodical in our plan stage. So for us, that looked like breaking down a workflow and really taking the time of what does this look like in practice. And that was actually one of the most useful conversations I think we had, certainly for me, just to kind of understand the sort of nuance of this practice context. How would this care plan be applied? What are all the practical considerations we need to have, you know, even just down to little things like, is everyone's laptop hooked up to a printer that we can provide the family with a copy, and considering what admin's role in this and the kind of the wider impacts around the team. So kind of having a theoretical workflow to sort of validate with the clinicians who were able to sort of guide us, for us, was really helpful. Okay, next please. So each sort of stage we've gone through a couple of cycles. We started off initially with a 1 week cycle, which For me, I assumed this would have to be a longer term process, but some of my learning as well was that lots of the initial problems you may come up with will reveal themselves kind of quickly. So for a first cycle, our quality improvement consultant here sort of recommended we did just a week to get a sense of what's going on. So we did, and we got lots of really good information from that. So our clinicians who were applying the tool recommended we added comments box after each section because they felt that more sort of breadth of detail could be captured that way. One of the big things we sort of really refined was maybe our understanding as opposed to like a more tangible change. So just viewing it as a living document that can be completed. There was maybe a little stress around the feeling of having to get everything done in a single session and fill out the whole care plan, but we ensured that any safety concerns or considerations were documented at first session, and the care plan as a whole was to be filled out no later than three contacts. Blank questions, so if something wasn't sort of applicable at the session, were to be marked not asked, so that anybody picking up the care plan is aware that it has been covered, it hasn't just been missed, but not deleted, so that we wouldn't alter it. We changed some of the language around, and we sort of clarified around the larger team that it's the IDSI language that we're using to try and standardize and sort of socialize that commonality of language. So I think, as I said before, one of the big things for me was don't undervalue the P. So I think, apart from anything else, a formal cycle like this offers some accountability. So I think if you're trying to implement something, actually giving yourself a timescale, this is how long it's going to run for, and here's how we're going to discuss whether it was a success after, was really useful. Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, P for plan. So don't undervalue the P. So actually making time to really sort of say, what's this going to look like before just running into it, and sort of considering everything that could come up and everything you need. Be open to your findings. I think this one was for me, like, I wanted this to succeed. And I think if you go in with too much of a strong mindset that this needs to work, then maybe you can overlook things that aren't working. So being open to this is iterative, and we're going to refine and improve this over time. Likewise, I think it's useful to test one problem at a time. My other habit is let's fix everything at once and make it perfect instantly. But I think this is a methodical approach, and I think if you're doing these at cycles, let's say let's change one thing and see what it looks like. Let's change one more thing and see what it looks like. So you really have an understanding of what's impacting what. And like any good research, don't HARK. So HARK is hypothesizing after results known. So again, it's very easy to fit the outcomes into your preconceived notion of what it should be. And I think if I was doing this again, I would have maybe had a better sense of my evaluation strategy. So what are the parameters that I will say this change is successful or unsuccessful, so that I can kind of review when they come up, and I have some firm guidance about what warrants a change in practice and what sort of do I and don't I implement, rather than just looking at the data after and kind of discussing it sort of without those guidelines. So I'm going to pass over to Tammy, who was one of the OTs on the team, who was actually doing the important work of actually implementing this, and I'm hoping she can sort of speak of her experience of that, and maybe a little bit about the subsequent work we started with the goal wheel and that sort of cycle. So I invite Tammy to take over.
Hi, everyone. So I was just going to speak to kind of our experience in working with Tom. And so throughout the process, there's a few things that kind of came up as clinicians in implementing the feeding care plan, and there was some good learning. So one of the things that Tom had referred to was just our discussions around the purpose of the tool is and how we can present it to parents in a kind of collaborative manner. So we came up with some key points that we used when we were introducing the care plan to parents, so they kind of understood the purpose of it. It really came down to about 3 points. I have them here, so I'll just read them out. The first one was that we just talk to parents about that the tool it's for parents to communicate a snapshot of where their child is at, and also to support them in having an overview of their child's current feeding abilities and techniques. We talked about it being a living document that will change with their child, and that the content would shift and the comments in the document would be added or changed based on their child. So not seeing it as a static document. And then lastly, we just, in terms of just the practicality of using it, we just talked about informing parents that we may not get to every part of the document at once, so that we would just mark where there was a section that we hadn't yet gotten to, that we would mark that it wasn't yet addressed. So some of the key learnings for me were, I had initially been kind of concerned about the time in terms of how I would fit that into our already full treatment sessions. And what I found when I kind of made the determination to really use the form and complete it with parents was that it did change the session, but in a really positive manner, in that we didn't do necessarily the same structure to the session, because we were focused on going through the different areas of the care plan together. But I found that it did really allow for parents to, like, I found that it really did facilitate that feeling of like parents being an active partner. And in terms of going through each section more kind of systematically, then it just allowed for parent concerns to come up that might not have otherwise come up. So, and it just indicated an area that where maybe it was a priority area that we hadn't yet looked at together. So I found that it did kind of allow for more discussion and more like feedback from parents about what's happening at home. And then the other piece was just knowing that when we're first setting up the feeding care plan, that it did take sometimes more than one session to really complete that with parents. And then once it was in place, then we've been finding that we can just make small adjustments based on the follow-up sessions. And then finally, I have heard from a number of parents where their children are heading off to from our program to a preschool program, and that parents have really like commented on the value of having a document that they can use as a communication tool with other people in their child's lives that are also part of their feeding. So I have heard that feedback from parents that they value having the form. So in terms of our next step, we're just looking at how we can include the goal wheel when we're using the feeding care plan. And I know for myself, like I try to provide parents with that kind of, at the end, we can go through what the feeding focus or objectives are and what their home strategies are. And so kind of our goal next is to kind of incorporate that information into the goal wheel.
Here's the business hoodie from a business.
So that's great. Thanks, Tammy and Tom for the great kind of detail about how you methodically walk through that, and just some of the lessons learned. We only have a few minutes left, and so we're not going to have time to ask everyone to ask, but I'm going to pose, does anybody want to ask Tom and Tammy a question about what they've gone through, and or if you feel like you want to ask another team a question or comment, then I'd like to open up the floor to allow for that. And in the meantime, we're going to run out of time around curbside consult. So what I'd like you to do is, in your group this afternoon, if you took notes on an idea that you wanted to connect to another team about, can you share that with our facilitators? Because we might be able to run a bit of a facilitated curbside consult webinar and bring the teams together to have a more in-depth discussion about how you went about that quality improvement and then the value that has been proposed. So there's a question here from Yolan. Is anyone using the goal wheel in a consultative program setting? Anybody feel they want to comment on that? And it can be anybody. It doesn't have to be Tom and Tammy. You guys might get off the hook. But you're welcome to speak to that question if you feel you could. Yolan, is there something that you wanted to know about the use of the goal wheel in this consultative program setting that you're struggling with, that you'd like some insights from other teams about?
Go ahead, Shannon, we're not muted.
Hi there, this is Shannon from Grand Prairie, Yola. We're trying to use the goal wheel in a consultative setting in a interdisciplinary PEDS team, and we're struggling with the fact that every time the child comes back, it's a brand new goal wheel because something has completely changed in that length of time between seeing them. And so we're having trouble putting it into practice, I guess I'd say.
Hi, this is Heather. I'm a dietitian in Lethbridge, and we have struggled to use the goal wheel because we do not do any paper charting. So although this may be something visually that we could use with the families, there's no way for us to then be able to use the goal wheel accurately in our charts, nor do we work in the same office or building as the rest of the feeding team. And so they would never be able to see that goal wheel either. So I think we have a couple of things we need to work through there in order to make this more effective for us.
Thanks. Yolan, any other follow-up questions before we see if anyone else has a question for a team?
No, thanks. I was just curious. I think that we're a consultative service and we'd have similar challenges with the length of time between visits and children returning with kind of a whole new presentation or a whole new question or concern. So I was just curious if anyone was using it and has had success in their consultative program. So.
Well, the other thing we can do is reach out to, there's lots of teams that weren't able to make it today because of COVID. We could reach out, Vanessa, and see if there's any other suggestions that we can garner from others. So that would be great. I think we have time for one more question to a team, either, question about a challenge or a success that you want to hear a little bit more about. Is anyone on the phone or in Zoom world going to be brave enough to ask it?
Hi, it's Melanie here from Alberta Children's Hospital. I am curious, and we can take this offline, but it's just really interesting to hear various teams from across the province talk about their adoption and implementation of the oral feeding care plan. And in particular, Mandy, you described the work that your team had done to adapt that care plan to your very specialized clinic settings. And I'm really just curious about how, I heard your feedback about how it's been a little bit of a frustration and at the same time, hoping that pulls through for you and your families are feeling really supported. I would be really interested in knowing how you adapted that care plan to fit with the highly specialized acute care setting that you're in. So again, we can take that offline, but just really interested to hear about the diverse settings that it's being used in.
Does anyone want to answer that? And maybe that's, Vanessa, what I'm thinking is if there is a lot of diversity and lots of different applications, that might be a nice webinar between action periods.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah. And Melissa said, I would love to see how you took the form and adapted it into SCM to gain some learnings for Connect Care. Maybe we can book a touch base another day. So what we could do is if you have questions or if there's a number of questions that all the teams are wanting to talk about in much more depth, we can also set up a webinar to pick a couple of the high value interest topics and then have that discussion. This whole consulting mechanism is to learn from each other, because you guys have done some fabulous work, and the process doesn't allow us to, the ILC, the way we've got it right now, doesn't allow us to have a coffee break and network with each other, which is normally what we do. So Vanessa, I think I've given you some ideas about how we can take this one step further. And because 2:05 is your break and you probably all need it, I'm going to say thank you. Great work. And over to you, Vanessa, to facilitate next steps.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tracy. I think.
Oh, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, so just to say thank you, Tracy, and I think, yeah, just some of those ideas you have, and certainly some of it we can take offline to think about, you know, where do we go and how do we have these conversations? You know, I go back to our parent story, family story earlier, and talking about that importance of building that community from a parent support, peer support approach, so they can learn, share resources. And I think this is the same. And I think, as you've highlighted, as we start to kind of hear a little bit in the early part of this meeting and at the end when we do the wrap up report out, as we start to hear of other people that have similar areas that they want to focus on over the next few months, it can really help guide us then to think about how we build those connections for the people that are doing the work, and also bring in some of those people with that QI expertise as well. So with that, I think we will take our 10-minute break. When we come back, we will come back into this big room as a starting place, and then Vanessa will magically transport us into our various breakout rooms, which always seems absolutely amazing when we all end up where we're supposed to. And we have a process if you don't. And so, yeah, so please take a few minutes, stretch, get something to drink, and we'll meet back here in 10 minutes. You can see Vanessa has a timer just waiting for me to be quiet. Oh, she already started it. Now I'll be quiet. We'll see you in a few.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
I'm going to be on the line if people have any questions or suggestions. Feel free to just ask them, type them, or say them out loud. But take your break.
Can you hear me now? Okay. That was a great idea. You should have suggested that 8 minutes ago.
Oh, sorry, Yolanda. I think we can hear you. Did you want to say something to the group?
Nice.
Your music is so uplifting, Vanessa. Tapping my foot.
I know, right? Oh, I was off mute. Good thing I didn't try to start humming to it.
So we're going to come back here in about 30 seconds if people are able to get settled. All right. Well, hopefully we have most people back, and others who aren't here will hopefully join back in here in the next minute or two, and that you were able to get up and kind of move around a little bit. So oops, I have a timer going off. Somebody. I don't know, Vanessa, if you can mute that line maybe.
Huh. Oh, it's my timer. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I was thinking, I didn't know there was. Sorry, that was probably very annoying for everyone. My apologies.
Oh, there we go. We're all awake now. The alarm clock has
Something new
gone
every
off.
day. Yes.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so yeah, so we're going to move through. So the first part really was about, hearing those different perspectives. We obviously had to hear the parent journey. We got to hear lots of, again, those little snippets of lots of work and challenges across the province. And now we're going to spend a bit more time kind of getting into our own teams and really looking at kind of where we want to go next. So just a bit of some reminders. So on our ILC SharePoint site, we have the Balanced Scorecard, the backgrounder, that really kind of talks about those key performance indicators, the action plan, report, forms, and a variety of those quality improvement resources that we can access both now now, as well as later. So as we kind of move into the next part here, so we're going to start off by looking at your own balanced scorecard. And so these have been updated with the most recent data and really trying to identify if there's anywhere that you want to adjust. And so that could be in terms of the weighting that you'll see kind of across the bottom. That helps to kind of give that total score. So if you know, you're doing kind of 100% of things all the time, is that still the same importance as you kind of considered it several months ago? And really starting to think about where some of those specific targets should be at. And I think as we move through and we make progress or hit challenges or things change, that is really important to think about where we want to be purposeful over these next few months. And so if anyone wants to delve into the scorecard more, we can always carve out a bit more time with the team leads in the future as well. So as we go through, we're going to initially kind of look at that and then really spend a good portion of this afternoon really looking at updating the action plans. And so that's really important, trying to look at the what we want to accomplish, but also starting to talk about the who, what, when, where, and always important, the why, really trying to understand why we want to target that particular area. What are we trying to get at? So again, QI, the 5 whys is a great technique to help kind of really dig into that one a bit. So we want to work through all of the indicators in the action plan. So making sure that we have times spent at the upfront, talking about those ones that you feel are most important. So you don't have to go kind of left or right across your scorecard, but really picking those ones that you really want to focus on. And really important that we regularly review the next steps and continue working on the action plan. So we know that there's lots of priorities, there's lots of things that come up every day. And so as we continue on this journey together, it's really important that we have that picture. And again, mountains, I see it as the map, right? We have that idea of, okay, I'm here now. What are the next steps? Which way am I heading? And I think those are taking this time to stop and pause and look around are always really important. Both in quality improvement and in the mountains. And so after the ILC, as a team, we'll continue to review the action plans, reviewing the results, and then we're going to come back together at the next ILC and see where we've gone, what are our ideas, and as Tracy highlighted, in the meantime, in between, we might have some opportunities to spend some more targeted time on a few particular areas, which leads me into the next slide. I think the report out. This will be, again, really important, I think, not only to help set our own direction, but as Vanessa and I and others are listening to what's being reported out, to see, are there other ways that provincially we can support? And Tracy highlighted, we might have some of those more structured conversations, we might involve QI, and really trying to understand, where do we want to go and how can we support each other to get there? The other big part, I think, highlighted is we really want to make sure that when we have this, that the whole team is aware. So making sure that we share it out with the whole team, because we know today people, might not have been able to be here or might have come and gone. And then we also want to make sure to think about what's the one thing your team will take back to your leadership and to share with those who aren't present today. So part of this, from a leadership point of view, manager, and I know talking to my director, what are those things that they can help assist with? What are those barriers? What are those opportunities that they can really help us think about? And sometimes that's at the zone level and sometimes it's at the provincial. So really trying to think about that one thing that we really want to highlight and share to those leaders. So we have the teams, and as we mentioned, we'll have some magic and we'll all end up in those breakout rooms. We have an amazing all-star group of facilitators who will be there and be with you. We have the team leads that we certainly thank for all the work that they do on these sessions and in between. And then we also have a help button that the team facilitator or the facilitators can do and come back to our amazing support team. And so if there are any kind of either technical or other, I don't know what we're doing, or I need help with this type questions, feel free to hit the button. So we'll just do some ground rules. I'll let you take a look through those. And I'd say really that the key is taking this time to really kind of dig into it and to share, share your thoughts, listen deeply, try to understand others' perspectives, and really think about, okay, this is, again, we have a little bit of time now. what do we need to focus on when we leave here over the next several months? And so part of what helps sometimes is that parking lot. So if we need to pull things out and say, okay, can't deal with that today, let's put it over there and then take it away, and maybe have some discussion with the team lead or with Vanessa or others in the future. So some groups are big, some groups are small, but we certainly know that all groups have a great depth of expertise, and look forward to hearing about the breakout. So you will get a reminder.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm looking forward to hearing about your discussions this afternoon. I just want to, I'm going to kind of guide us through this process. We have 12 groups sharing their report outs in a little less than 20 minutes. So if you do the math, you've got about a minute and a half per group. So I am going to be, if I know that you're excited and have lots to share, I'm afraid I'm going to have to move people along. If you go past your time, I know everyone will be anxious to get out of here at 4 o'clock and probably have something already scheduled after this, whether it's picking up kids or whatever it is that you need to do. We want to make sure you get there. Please listen carefully to the groups that present before you so that you can try to speak to something that's different from what's already been shared. And then just a note again that after the session, everyone's balanced scorecards and action plans will be posted on the Community of Practice site so that you can dig into and see one another's work, and also so that your leaders can see what's been going on and continue to support you. As we go through the groups, we're going to move through from north to south. So 2 groups in the north. We'll start with the Grand Prairie group and then go to the broader group. So Laurel, are you first up then?
I am first up. Thanks, Julie. We had a very interesting discussion, and our main goals, we quickly set our main goals as needing to continue with a collaborative goal wheel and adding the eating and feeding swallowing care plan and the survey as to something that we do consistently with our clients, which led us to a very long discussion as to why it wasn't happening consistently. And so we now realize that we need to develop a workflow that is consistent across our disciplines from a patient flow journey. So that is what we're going to work on, is really focusing on our patient flow journey and how to make that a better experience for our clients. And then that will support what we need to do for them.
Love it. Thanks, Laurel. I know Cindy will like that too, because we're actually doing some work on Goal Wheel together. Cindy, do you want to go ahead next?
And Cindy's on my list of people to chat with after this.
Excellent.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Here's where we landed after a very fruitful and honest, candid discussion. We need to go back to our leaders and just ask them, really, what can we offer for pediatric eating and swallowing services, given that we have, in most cases, sole practitioners who get low number of referrals, when the best practice, or really the practice that we should be doing, is providing it in service in a multidisciplinary team. And so to that end, we feel that we are able to provide some limited service when it comes to for follow-up, and that in order for us to do that, our next steps will be to do shadowing and continue with our professional development.
Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate that. Need to be really realistic in your approach. And yeah, I would love to talk more with you about that too. This is so many great discussions started. Next, we're going to go to the Stollery, the 3 clinics together. Amanda?
Yeah, so in terms of next steps for our clinics, the high points are first and foremost kind of trying to figure out how we can integrate our care plans electronically into Connect Care, probably in the form of an after visit summary. It's been on our to-do list for a while and we just haven't made it happen yet. We'll also revisit our survey distribution and see if we can kind of start to increase our responses again, as we hit a little bit of a plateau lately. The other thing we're going to try and do is do a deeper dive into our hospital and emergency department admissions. maybe try and do a root cause analysis again, just to try and figure out which of our patients are ending up in hospital and why, to see if we can help avoid that going forward. But ultimately just shifting our focus more onto our multidisciplinary clinics going forward. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, and I know that across the province, other teams, as they come on to Connect Care or are currently using Connect Care, they certainly will benefit from the work that you do on integrating care plans. And yeah, I look forward to hearing how all of your ideas come together at our next ILC. Is there anyone from Stollery here that would like to speak to your discussion today? I know it was tentative whether there would be attendance and whether that group was going to come together with the Calgary Home Nutrition Program.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Or sorry, from Stollery Home Nutrition Program, I meant to say, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they weren't able to be part of the breakouts. Thanks, Julie.
No problem. Thank you. Cynthia, on behalf of the Glenrose.
We had a nice session. I think we've got a few things we'd like to address. I need to analyze our specific survey responses to see if there's changes we can make to improve the service delivery. We're going to approach the Northern Neonatal and Infant Follow-Up Clinic and our pediatric specialized rehabilitation outpatient programs to see if they can participate in the survey dissemination, because the kids access some eating, feeding, and swallowing services there on the intervention side, but we'll check with leadership first. And we want to review the PEAS clinical practice guidelines and adopt relevant measures in our clinic and utilize them on a consistent team-wide basis. And we changed a couple of indicators on the Balanced Scorecard just because we were meeting our targets, which is pretty exciting.
That's so cool. And it's so neat to hear how people are working on such a variety of local initiatives that all feed into the overall scorecard. Yeah, I appreciate too your focus on really drilling down into what we're hearing from families and the experiences they're having. Thanks, Cynthia. Next, I guess we have from Central Zone, Christine and Nancy, or Nancy. Not sure if you have one spokesperson or if you're each going to take a shot.
Yep, I'm going to chat. So our main focus is very similar to Glenrose and the Stollery. We want to increase our survey numbers so that our scorecard is a robust reflection of the work that we're doing. So some of the things that we're going to do moving forward are some changes to our processes. So making sure that our surveys are printed out ahead of time if we're giving out copies, or our goal wheels are printed out ahead of time with stickers on them, or we're emailing clients after they've come in just to talk about that family survey process. So our biggest concern is just getting those family surveys back and increasing our numbers. And then some of us are going to be reaching out to some of the other zones that are doing really well with those survey results. So, what's going well, what's not working, and just gathering some more information.
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, really great to see some real practical strategies as well as those connections happening across the province and learning from one another. So thanks for sharing. I'm wondering now about the ACH Home Nutrition Support Program. Do we have anyone here to speak from that group?
We can probably speak a little bit collectively. We across the ACH, we had quite similar goals we found. So maybe I can speak to that a little. So in HNSP and neonatal follow-up, some of our focus will be around kind of the self-effectiveness sort of reporting, just so we're reflecting the work we're doing better. In eating, feeding, swallowing clinic and EFS, early childhood rehab, too many acronyms, we're going to be trying to have ongoing evaluation of the sort of episodes of care model we're doing. That's already been shown to kind of positively impact our accessibility measures, but we want to kind of broaden the evaluation and see how it's impacting sort of satisfaction and other metrics. We were talking as a kind of collection of clinics about how we still feel some of our work is a little siloed. So some of our focus will be on how do we better measure our sort of ability to collaborate. Some of that discussion led to greater engagement of pediatricians as kind of quarterbacks, and trying to reflect on sort of what some of the barriers for them sort of doing that role is, and how, in fact, how do we socialize the care plan to pediatricians and get greater kind of uptake in the community there. So I think those are our kind of immediate focuses, really sort of more pediatrician engagement in as partners, and kind of broader evaluation and greater self-reporting.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah. Interesting again to see just the collaboration that's developing. And are you speaking then across the ACH teams?
Quite possibly. If anyone else has things to add, please do so. But I think that covered quite a bit of it.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I think you captured kind of the general discussion. It was nice to kind of reflect on what the parent had said during the beginning of this day, and how that coordination of care is just so key. And so looking at ways that our action can support that better.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so powerful, hey? And I'd love to follow up with whoever is looking into the evaluation of episodes of care. So would that be, that's you, Thomas? Okay, you're on my hit list. Thank you. Then next we have reading across, the Complex Airway Clinic.
Hi, it's Paula. I'm speaking on behalf of Mayor. So our two actions, the biggest and most important one is this care plan. The feeding care plan, who's aware of it, how it's communicated, where it comes from, how it's updated, and making sure that the family and all the stakeholders are acutely aware of the changes going forward. Because we work with, like, Thomas spoke about being siloed because we're out in the community, and how we communicate that care plan amongst all the stakeholders, because we have yet to come on to Connect Care. Once that happens, I think that will be sort of self-explained. But how do we, in the meantime, work on it and make sure that all the stakeholders are involved? Do they come out of hospital with a care plan? The parents are aware of the care plan, they have a copy of it, and it's also what the pediatrician has, what the home care has, and all those stakeholders. So that's what are gonna be our takeaway. The other thing is our narrative when we're doing the surveys with the families, because one of our indicators talked about the accessibility that the families and the children have to the care team, the feeding care team, and making sure that they understand that it includes all the stakeholders, whether it's the pediatrician, whether it's the clinic, whether it's our team, what it is that they are feeling that they're accessing all those teams. And so that we have a better narrative if we're assisting them in filling out the survey or not. And then the thing that we're going to take back to management, we had the luxury of having our manager in our workout group. And again, we're going to focus, I think this care plan bit is to keep it transparent and well communicated. So those are our goals currently.
Thanks, Paula. Definitely themes around coordination, and it sounds like you'll have some further discussion. Catherine, you want to share on behalf of the Pediatric Community Rehab Team in Calgary?
Hi, Julie. This is Ellie. I'm going to share on behalf. Yeah, Catherine had to step out. So echoing what a lot of other teams are saying, our program is really going to start focusing on consistency in use of the goal wheel and further investigating how we can incorporate the EFS care plan into our practice, and also looking at a process and plan around getting surveys sent out to our families, and a process and how we're going to analyze that data and move it forward.
Thanks, Ellie. It's so great to think about some of these tangible tools like the goal wheel and how those will potentially impact what we hear back from families. So nice to see those connections from an evaluation perspective as well. Christine and Sarah, you're up. What did you
Hi,
guys
Julie. It's interesting to me how many similarities there are, especially across Calgary Zone, but also across all the teams. So we are also going to be continuing to socialize the care plans amongst our team. And the way we thought we would do that was to have a care plan champion who would help with everyone at the various sites to start implementing that. And we're also planning to have an internal process that we develop to allow our admin to get the surveys out to families rather than having that be on the therapists. We also had the luxury of having our management in with us, and instead of having to tell them something, they gave us kudos for having continued to really support this process during the difficult year that we've been having.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, and kudos to all the teams for sure. Care planning is a theme, and I know that our families that we've had it, all of the families, not just Judy speaking today, but that's been a theme among the families too. So I'm sure they'd be reassured to hear this focus. Janine, are you here to speak on behalf of Medicine Hat Regional Hospital team?
Yes, yeah. So we decided to adjust some of our weights on our scorecard as well because we were achieving some of our goals. We put it over to effectiveness. And so one of the things we're going to work on or do right away is as far as looking at continuity of care, and we're going to start sending a copy of the feeding and care plan to family physicians. The pediatricians are already part of it, but we'll send it to them as well when the patient is discharged. Another thing that we are going to continue to work on is through the virtual care project and increasing the amount of virtual care sessions that we do. And the other last one that big one we're still working on is actually our ARD profile under there as well. And so one of the things we're going to take back to leadership, because Tricia was in the other group today, and so we're just going to go back to her as far as looking at communication between programs with the care plan. So taking a look at the how, the what, and the when.
Thank you, Janine. Some good next steps. And it struck me a couple of times, and particularly when you were speaking, do you feel like you're learning a little bit about evaluation through this process? A ton, right?
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. Interesting. It's cool to hear people talking about weighting measures and just all the processes of the ILC that come along with this work. Teresa,
well, sorry, I have to give kudos
go ahead.
Siobhan is absolutely wonderful, and she explains it all to us, because I have to be honest, I don't understand a lot of it until she explains it to
me. And understand it or not, it's being integrated into the work, and that's great. Yeah, thanks. Teresa, are you speaking on behalf of Southwest Children's?
Yep, I am. So our similar themes to everyone else. Survey for us is a big one. We just want to be more consistent in getting it out. So we problem solved a few different ways. Again, because we're a bunch of different programs, we all will probably have to problem solve a little bit for our own programs as to what will work best, but we came up with a few ideas today, which was really great. And then that care plan and goal wheel, we're still really struggling with that. Again, different programs, different charting processes. And I think we've decided, I forget who said it earlier today, just that any progress is better, it's an improvement. So even we're just gonna start with one child and just see how it goes and see how that flow kind of works, even just trialing the care plan with one and then seeing if that triggers some ideas, and we'll kind of go from there. So those are our two main ones, and we have leadership with us today, so they know what we want to work on.
Sounds great. Thanks, you guys. And we'll make sure that, I know at the end it gets hard to find, it's great to hear the themes, but hard to think about how you approach it differently. So we're going to start at the South next time, and so you guys can go first. So thank you everyone for your participation. It's really so interesting and inspiring to hear about your discussions and the results that you're achieving and the next steps that you're planning. So we just love to see people working together like peas in a pod. So Got to throw those in wherever we can. Just a couple of quick things to review before we wrap up today. Just as a reminder, the upcoming webinar on the 24th, and then the plan for an additional education session in January, February, and the ILC scorecard and action plan review again, February, March 2022. So, a reminder of next steps for everyone. Please finalize and post your balanced scorecards, adjustments, and action plans on the SharePoint within the next 2 days. Your team leads will continue sending data so we can update your scorecards monthly, and it will be interesting to monitor the outcomes and hopefully motivating as you see your scores improving over time or learning when they don't, and that's all good too. Please continue with the family survey as we know you are planning to, so that we can continue to incorporate family feedback into planning. Your team leads and coaches will continue bringing your team together regularly to review your scorecards and adjust your action plans, and knowing that there may be flexibility needed depending on your context and the demands and pulls that come to you in relation to COVID and other priorities. We want to encourage you to use the community of practice to connect with colleagues across the province. It's great to see these connections today, and we want to continue to build on them. Check out other people's ideas, post your questions, share your tools. We're thinking of other ways to have interprovincial teams, connecting and interacting and sharing. So please help us if you have creative ideas. Let us know your suggestions. So in closing, just really want to thank Judy again for sharing her experience and just her openness and really impactful messages from her perspective as a parent. Tracy, thank you for your expertise and all you bring, not just to coming to the meetings, but just you're the backbone of the ILC and the foundation that keeps us going. And so thank you for that. Thanks to Tom and Tammy for care planning, and our support team, Jillian, Gloria, Vanessa, amazing. It's so smooth and seamless and fun. Thanks to all our facilitators, too numerous to mention, the ILC team leads for what you're doing to in between meetings, as well as your leadership here today. And then of course, just the TP's working group and leadership team that all behind the scenes tries to keep this moving forward. So thanks so much to all of you. Wish you a very happy fall. And just knowing your time is valuable, we do have a short survey, so we want to make sure that you got the most possible out of this afternoon. So please share your feedback in the survey. It will come out to you. It's here, and I think it will also come in an email, probably knowing Vanessa within the next 48 seconds or something like that. It's also in the chat if you just want to catch up the link in the chat and do it right now. That's fantastic. Thank you, everyone, once again, and we'll say goodbye for now.